Well, hello, everyone. I am Ray Paprocki, publisher and general manager of Dispatch Magazines, which includes Columbus Monthly, Columbus CEO, ColumbusAlive.com, and many other titles. Welcome to Build Buzz, a conversation geared toward learning the tips needed to gain media coverage for your small business. Today's program is brought to you by both Columbus CEO and Belle Communication. I want to thank Columbus CEO editor Katy Smith, who is with us today, for being the driving force behind this idea, which happened as she was talking with various Black owners of small businesses for a CEO story. She thought it would be a good thing to bring us all together, partnered with Belle Communication and the rest of us that are on the panel today, and we all certainly agreed that it would be a great idea. Our goal as communicators is to inform our readers and viewers about their community and make sure we're doing our best that those stories reflect the whole community. And while we are trying to do so, we can certainly do better. And that is one of the goals of today's session. Today, you'll meet a group of journalists who will share how to best work with them. And we'll hear from two seasoned public relations practitioners who will share their tips for successfully pitching media. We want to give plenty of time for questions. If you have a question, please place it in the chat box. At the appropriate time, I'll call on you to ask it live to the group when we get to that portion of the conversation. Also, just a friendly and redundant reminder of all of these calls that we've been doing is to mute your mics, except when you're speaking. We'd appreciate that. So we're going to get started with introductions. We will begin with Katy Smith, editor of Columbus CEO. Katy?
Thanks, Ray. Hi, everyone. I'm Katy Smith, editor of Columbus CEO. I'm excited to meet all of you because I'm always looking for more good small business stories. Columbus CEO is a glossy magazine that publishes once a month in print. We also have a daily online presence, although that is not our focus. We send out a weekly newsletter that has a roundup of the stories we've been writing about. And it also has a business events calendar, which is a great opportunity for small business owners. If you're having your own Zoom webinar, email me and I'll try to get that onto that calendar. CEO's audience is the Columbus business community, and that includes high-level executives at our Fortune 500 companies to everyday people who are just starting to take those early steps to start their own businesses. My greatest hope as the editor is that the magazine's fun and interesting to read. I want people to read it and go, oh my gosh, I never knew that before, or I had never known that thing about that person. I've known that person for 10 years and I never knew she slept with 14 teddy bears, or whatever. I want it to be interesting and I want it to have information you can't find anywhere else. Business journalism can sometimes get kind of a bad rap for being boring, like it's all just stock reports and analysis of revenue and shareholder returns. But I don't think it's like that. Ultimately, business stories are the stories of people. And entrepreneurs, to me, are some of the most interesting people around. You guys are creative, you're motivated, you're brave. The magazine publishes according to our editorial calendar. We put that out once a year. It's a structured schedule of features that run every month. We have a small business spotlight, a nonprofit spotlight, innovation spotlight, which is for tech companies. Sometimes we do companies in the medical space or just businesses that are innovating in one way or another. We also have the emerging business spotlight that we started putting out last year. I've been very pleased with it. It is specifically for minority-owned businesses. And that's in partnership with the Economic and Community Development Institute. We also have Tech Talk, which is a great opportunity for very early stage tech companies to get coverage. A lot of times, sort of in business journalism, the threshold to get coverage is, do you have employees? Do you have clients? Do you have revenue? Because of course, all businesses start off as these great ideas, and sometimes the owners will approach us wanting to get traction. And it's difficult to get a journalist to say yes before you have employees or clients. But in Tech Talk, you have that opportunity if you're doing a technology startup. If you want to pitch me a story, just email me, ksmith@columbusceo.com. And let me know what you would think readers would enjoy from reading your story. I always approach everything from a reader standpoint. So if you approach me as a reader, it will go a long way. Please keep in mind that I receive pitches all the time, so you may not hear back from me right away. Don't take it personally. It may take months, even if I say, yes, we want to feature you. It may take months to get into the magazine because we do plan pretty far ahead, and we have a long line of people waiting. We might ask you really rude questions about your sales, how many employees you have, what, where did you get your funding? Please know those are not questions meant to, be rude or ask private information. You absolutely have the right as a private business owner to say you decline to answer those questions. But those are just great ways we think to convey to readers more about your company. And also it helps other readers who might be looking for funding and advice. Again, I like for the magazine to have content you can't find anywhere else. So if you've been featured everywhere else already, it's probably not going to be a good thing to let me know that, or I'll probably find it out because we do research companies before we write about them, but it won't bode well for getting into the magazine. We like to have exclusive content. That's about it for CEO.
Great, thank you, Katy. The editorial calendar you referenced, folks can find that on the Columbus CEO website, correct?
Yes.
All right, great. Next, Alan Miller.
Hello, everyone. Alan Miller, I'm editor of the Dispatch. I'm also the regional editor for Gannett, Ohio, which is a network of 21 daily newspapers and about 60 weekly newspapers. We welcome your suggestions, your input, your story ideas. We're always on the look for new stories to tell about the people of Columbus and across Ohio. We have a team of reporters in Columbus and also across Ohio. So a story that appears in the Dispatch or on dispatch.com could easily also show up in any of those other papers or the websites associated with them. And within the Dispatch newsroom, I'm not sure where everybody on this in this meeting might be situated, but I'll speak locally to Columbus, that we have a small business team. We also, which is going to grow soon, we're in the process of hiring a reporter specifically to focus on diversity and inclusion issues within the business community, or as it affects more broadly the economy and the effects of the economy on diverse populations. So that position has been advertised, and we have applications in hand, and we'll be starting interviews on that soon. So I'm very excited about having that person on board soon. By mentioning the business staff, I don't want to make it sound like that's the only opportunity to pitch stories to the Dispatch. As Katy mentioned, we're interested in telling the stories of the people who run companies, who keep them running, the people behind the scenes who come up with the ideas for new products, the people who do the work, and also the things that they do outside of work. There are some really wonderful stories to be told about the stories of the people who work hard in the back shop, and then on the weekends volunteer to make their neighborhoods better, or improve the quality of life for people across Central Ohio. They're the kind of stories that you saw in our Dispatch Media Group Everyday Heroes Awards just recently. And there's another feature that I know Erica will talk about that is a great place to feature the people who who really make Central Ohio the terrific place it is to call home. If I could just a minute longer mention to you that if you have stories to pitch to the Dispatch, it would be best to figure out, if you can, who is most likely to write about the topics that you're trying to get covered. If it's a business story, I'd start with the business editor, who at the moment is Jim Weicker. We just made a change there. He's in that role at least temporarily. We made some staffing changes that put Jim in that position, and he's also a writer who covers development and real estate. Mark Williams covers energy and banking and finance. Patrick Cooley covers restaurants and breweries and distilleries, and we call him the vice reporter because he also covers the the medical marijuana beat. Not that that's a vice, but it sort of fits. And then we have a number of other reporters on other beats that easily could end up writing stories that relate to businesses. So if you're not sure of who you should contact, then you can call the newsroom and ask, who would cover a story on this, and someone, usually my assistant Diana Hill, would be the person to tell you who best to make that happen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Next is Erica Thompson.
Hi, everyone. I'm a features reporter at the Dispatch, and as Alan mentioned, we want to tell great stories about people, human interest stories. And so I thought I would go through some specific examples of what I'm looking for and things that I've written about. So if you're a business and you provide a unique service or have an interesting backstory, that is something that I look for. Also, if you've reached a milestone, that can be a great entry point for pitching. So for example, Spoonful Records downtown just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And it was a way to not only tell their story, but talk about the vinyl resurgence at the time that they opened and filling a need downtown where there weren't vinyl stores at the time that they opened. Also, I wrote about a place called Scotty's Cafe. They landed on Yelp's top 100 places to eat in the US. So that was really interesting for Columbus, and a lot of people didn't know about that restaurant. Also, if you're a business and you're the first business of your kind in the city, or the only one, or perhaps the last among businesses that have gone away, I think that's an interesting story that we'd like to tell. Also, if you are responding to a national issue, or perhaps your business is part of a trend. This wasn't, under the greatest of circumstances, but I wrote about Regal Beauty Hair Supply in Old Town East because they were one of several Black-owned businesses that applied for PPP loans but were locked out. So, if your business is going through a tough time, you're probably not the only one. And so we definitely want to hear from some local voices on that issue as well. Also, we have a ton of festivals and annual events here in the city, and we're always looking for different ways to write about them. So if you're a business that has been participating in one of these annual events, that might be a good time to tell your story. And we also have a podcast called Life in the 614. So we're always looking for folks to talk to about something fun and do like turn around a quick interview that you can listen to. As Alan mentioned earlier, we do have a series called The Good Life, and this is where we focus on nonprofits. So I don't know if we have any nonprofits in the room here, but if you are, or if you know someone and we haven't written about you, that would be an excellent platform for you. And we're pretty flexible. I mean, if you're doing great work that is impacting the community, we really want to tell your story. I've talked to people who run mobile libraries. I talked to like a volunteer who snuggles turtles, and also volunteers who put up winter clothing on a fence in the South Side. So it really runs the gamut, and we really want to hear from you. So you can contact me via email at ethompson@dispatch.com. But also, as Alan was mentioned, if you have read a certain reporter or know of a certain editor and you want to reach out to them directly, you can see our full list at dispatch.com/contact. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. And if you don't mind me sharing, as folks may see your Prince paraphernalia in the back, not only is Erica a fan, she is an internationally recognized expert in his music. She's spoken overseas at symposiums and has done considerable research. So just a little tidbit to share about Erica.
Thank
All right,
you, Ray.
thanks. Certainly. Dave Ghosh, it's your turn.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, my name is Dave Ghosh. I'm the editor of Columbus Monthly Magazine. I've been the editor for nearly 2 years now. Previously, I was the editor of Columbus CEO, and before that, for quite a while, I was an editor and a writer for Columbus Monthly. Columbus Monthly has been around for 40 plus years. We are the first and the best city magazine in town. We are a general interest magazine, and what that means is we cover the city as a whole. We cover all parts of it, all kinds of different topics, politics, power, poverty, real estate, dining, you name it. If it has to do with Columbus, we're interested in it. That said, we do have a limited amount of space, and we do cover a lot of topics, so it can be a challenge for some folks to actually get in the magazine. Our focus, as Ray often says, is explanation and discovery. And what that means is we are trying to explain how the city works. And we also are trying to point out some of the coolest things and most interesting things about the city. So for the latter, that means we point out some of those things in features like our Best of Columbus feature, which is an annual tradition, runs in the July issue, and in other reader service packages. Like last year, we did Hidden Columbus, and for our November issue, which is going to be on newsstands soon, we are doing a big service package on pets. So we try to hit those two things as kind of our main points of emphasis. There are a few topics that we do really try to emphasize, and this is a good opportunity for small businesses. Is we cover dining and food particularly aggressively. We have a dining section that runs every month in the magazine, and we also cover a lot of openings and things like that online, exclusive content. We also have a home and style section that is another monthly section in the magazine. Includes fashion and real estate. And I also like to point out that Columbus Monthly is not just the magazine. Of course, we have the website where we have web-only content, but we also have ancillary publications, which can be a good opportunity for small businesses. We have Home and Garden, which comes out twice a year. Columbus Monthly Health, which is an annual publication. Columbus Weddings, which comes out a couple times a year. And Best Driving Vacations. Not all of them are good fits for small businesses, but they can be a good opportunity as well. Also in our front of the book section called Art City, we often do stories on small businesses, kind of more quirky, unusual businesses. First, a tip for folks pitching us, we really like people stories, personalities. We want to focus on things that are a bit unusual. So if you're trying to, if you're pitching us, I would try to emphasize those things when you're reaching out to us. We're not so much interested in the actual opening of something, but if there's a story behind the story, that's kind of what we want to tell. And one last tip would be, we plan quite a bit in advance because we are a monthly print publication. Usually we're looking, in terms of planning our editorial lineups, at least a couple of months in advance. So it does help to reach out to us soon. Earlier the better. We can cover more breaking things on our website, but if you want to get in the print magazine, do try to reach out early. All right, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, thank you, Dave. Next, welcome to Yolanda Harris.
All right, let me unmute. Yeah, again, yes, I'm Yolanda Harris. I am an evening anchor and reporter at WBNS 10 TV. I've been there a little over 3 years now. Before that, I spent more than 20 years at another local TV station. But I stayed in Columbus. This is my hometown, and I feel very fortunate to be able to stay in my hometown. That's been good for me. I wrote down some things for us as far as the type of stories that we look for at 10 TV. And one of the big things we do news for everyone, but one of the things that we really focus in on is her. And by her, we're talking about women, we're talking about moms. And even though stories are for everyone, we do concentrate on those. And when I say the stories for her, we're talking about safety, how to protect your family, how to educate your kids, education, consumer news, how to save money, how to cut costs, healthy living, fitness, and things like that. So those are things that can include, a larger group rather than just women, but her is who we look for when we're trying to formulate what stories we'll put on our news. I would say that for us, we have different segments of news that we look for. We, of course, cover the crime, but we also do how to keep your home safe from crime. We do Thrive with coronavirus, the pandemic. We've do a feature on stories how to thrive during the pandemic and get through it. Where's the love? That's something that I do. I just think in this time of news, there's nothing but bad news, doom and gloom, election mess, coronavirus. It's just so much stuff. So I'm kind of looking for the good stories. I call it Where's the Love? With everything going on in our country and the world right now, where's the love? We want to see it. So I ask people, if you know someone or an organization doing something good for our community, let us know about it. You can nominate them on our website. We also do 10 Investigates. There's a lot of different things that our investigative team latches onto and covers. We also have Consumer 10 to tell you about things that are recalled, things that are unsafe for your family, things that the latest scam out there and things like that. The way to reach us and pitch a story is that I say nowadays with social media, there's so many ways to reach people. And I would say once you figure out what your focus is on what you want, I guess, advertisement for or news coverage for, what's the benefit for your business? How will you benefit and what do you hope to gain for it? And once you figure that out, it's good to reach out to media and to journalists who may share that same interest, or maybe they cover that particular beat and you can say things about your company and tag them in that so that they will see that, because we get a lot of emails and a lot of time I think emails can be lost in them. I mean, I'll have like 100 some emails and could be 1,000 or so when I come back from a weekend or a vacation, more than that. So kind of get inundated with that. But we're always looking for great stories, and you never know, we could be following you. So just keep yourself out there on social media, send messages to, once you figure out their interests. If you have I don't know, a pet business. You know, I have dogs. I'm big on dogs and animals. That's my jam. So, you know, tag me in that and I'll say, oh, that's great. And that's how I come across a lot of neat things. If it's the crime reporter and there's something going on in your neighborhood, tag that person, the consumer reporter, the investigative reporter. So it's kind of just figure out who has similar interests or covers a beat that your business is covering themselves. And then once you get to a point and you've kind of made connection, they may be familiar with your brand, send out an email and just say, hey, you know, I see that you cover stories on this. I've reached out to you on social media, and you never know. And also when you do things for your business and talk about what's new in your business and what your business is doing, tag TV stations, tag newspapers, tag magazines. Because like I said, we're always looking for story ideas, new creative. And as someone else mentioned on this, the way to get a story covered is not to say, hey, Channel 10, 4 and 6 are doing this already. I already called them. They're going to cover it. We don't have the FOMO, fear of missing out. You know what I mean? So we don't want what they're going to have a lot of times. So if it's something new and original and something that your company's doing that's special, yes, reach out. And if you don't get a response from one station or they're not going to cover it, then you move on. You know, I say try all outlets, but, you know, don't let us know. Let's see, what else is there? Also, your company actually could be a source for us. Like I said, we look on, you know, different people's social media, looking for story ideas and things like that. And we do find a lot on there and we reach out. So you could consider yourself a source. So tag someone, send a note to someone or call in and say, hey, my company specializes in this. Here's what's going on in our community right now. If you do anything on this, we could be, you know, a source for you, an expert per se. So whether it's health, if it's crime, if it's consumer, different things like that, because we do specials and we do reach out to experts on the different topics because we want a panel to discuss or we want experts to refer to. I would say, once you figure that out, it's great because it's free advertising for your company. So find a way to parlay your organization or your company in a way that can be beneficial to a news outlet because it's a win-win. We get news to cover and we get something new to put out there and you get the free advertisement. So that's what, you know, I put out there and I would recommend. So that's about all I have. That's it.
Great, thank you, Yolanda. All right, so we've introduced all the journalists on the panel. Now we will move to our PR practitioners. Gayle Saunders will lead us off in that area. Gayle?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I am Gayle Saunders. I am founder and CEO of the Saunders Company. We are a full-service PR firm located right here in Columbus, Ohio. We are a minority certified and women certified enterprise, so we're really proud of that. We focus on a number of things, reputation management, which is media relations, crisis communications, communication strategy development, stakeholder engagement, diverse media bias. That's our core area of focus. But of course, again, we are a full service firm. We are very, very proud of the work we do. That's high level impact work. And so we have a passion for results, a passion for connecting with our clients. And we're just very pleased to be part of this panel today. In a few moments, we're going to talk you through and underscore some of those pitching opportunities for you. But with that, I'll turn it over back to Ray.
Great, thanks, Gayle. Next is Megumi Robinson. She will talk briefly, and in the meantime, if you have questions, you can start posting them in chat. We'll get to them in a few minutes. But we'll turn it over to Megumi first.
Thank you so much, Ray. I'm Megumi Robinson. I am a senior director at Belle Communication. We are a certified women business enterprise as well, and we're really excited to host this important conversation with Columbus CEO. A little bit about Belle. We are a Columbus-based agency that helps businesses grow through PR, social media, influencer relations, and creative strategy. We work with brands of all sizes. So notably, some of the Columbus brands that you might have heard of who we work with range from Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams to Big Lots, Riker Automotive, and North Country Charcuterie. So we love helping brands tell their story. And even more importantly, we love helping brands use PR that will help drive toward their business goals. Prior to joining Belle, I oversaw PR at Experience Columbus. And so throughout my career, I've had really the privilege to work with each of the publications and many of the writers on this panel. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience who I've connected with throughout my time there. And so I'm really excited to share some of the tips and tricks that we've gleaned along the way. So Gayle and I are going to kind of tag team here, taking some of the tips that the media shared and sharing our perspective on then how to apply those so that your business can build buzz.
Right, so Megumi and Gayle, if you could lead us off. So let's say you're a business owner in the audience and you're thinking, okay, well, I could reach out to a media person myself, but I don't know how to do this very well. That's not what I do. My business is this. I'm not a marketing PR person. At what point, what are your suggestions as far as a business owner reaching out to your companies to when do they need your expertise to step in and sort of what do you do at that point?
Well, I'll start off with that, Ray, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about is just really pitching a reporter. And so when you think about what that entails, whether it's a story that you've been working on for some time, or whether it's something that has come up new, there really is a strategy around pitching a reporter. And so I want to walk you through some of those steps. Over the 25 years I've been in this business, it really has morphed somewhat, but some of those tips are the same. Just remember, relationships matter. And so one of the first things you want to do is really plan ahead. You want to know what your angle will be. You've heard from the media experts around the table today that really talk about really understanding the reporter, knowing what your narrative is going to be, what you want the end user, that consumer, to receive on the back end. Know if your story is a feature story, a trend story, a story about innovation. Does it align to something that's in the current event space today? Is it an issue? Does it align with education? You need to know that and plan for that before you pitch to the media. Also, you want to know who's going to be your spokesperson. You want to really understand that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then what pieces are available? What pieces do I have to help augment the story visually or otherwise? And so think about all of those things before you pitch the reporter. And then once you've done that and you've planned, okay, I have the story idea, do your research. As Yolanda and others have said today, you've got to know what the reporter is focused on. What is there in the old days, we should say beat, but what is it that they're focused on? What is their area of interest? And so you really want to understand that. Read their articles, follow them on social media, get to understand how they write, which is very important. So those are the types of things that you want to do in terms of your research. Also, you want to understand how the newsroom works. As has been mentioned earlier by all of these reporters, you don't want to blast the newsroom with your release. You want to be very deliberate in who's going to receive that. And if you don't know, every media person on this call today, on this Zoom today, has said, call somebody and ask. So you definitely want to do that. But do not blast your press release or blast your email to every reporter you know in the newsroom. Don't want to do that. The other thing that you really want to focus on is really understanding that you want to make it easy for the reporter. The newsrooms have changed over the years. They have had to streamline their operations, but most importantly, reporters are doing so many things. They're writing, they're doing the visual piece, they're on digital. So make it easy for the reporter. So make it easy for them to capture the essence of your story. Put some bullets in there. And if you're sending something via email, which sometimes you will eventually follow up via email, whether you reach them out whether you reach out to them in social media initially, you will eventually follow up with email. Make sure your subject line is very deliberate and tells that reporter what it's about. You don't want the reporter to have to sift through a whole 3 or 4 paragraphs to understand your story. Make it simple for them, make it easy for them, and also get their attention. You know, there are headlines for a reason, because headlines capture your attention. You want to think that way when you're creating your pitch as well. So don't bury the headline, make it to the top of your story and your pitch. Also, keep it as short as you can, but also make sure that it's very meaty and very tells the story. I mentioned identifying the spokesperson earlier. That is critical. Now, they won't admit it, the media won't admit it, but you know, they really don't like to always talk to the PR people. We know that, we get it. So you really want to make sure that you have a credible, PR people, absolutely credible, but you also want to make sure that if your story is focused on a feature or a new innovation or something along those lines, you want to make sure that you have a good expert who can really underscore the importance of that story. So really think about your spokespeople. And also, if you're doing a story on technology, make sure your spokesperson can keep the jargon low and simplify that tech jargon so that the end user, remember, you're thinking about the end user, can really understand and get that story. So spokespeople are very critical to your pitch. And then finally, well, I won't say finally, I have a couple of more, but you want to be honest, you want to be authentic, and you want to be real. So when you're doing the pitch, or as PR people, we often do the pitch, we want to make sure that we're authentic and real in our communications. Reporters, they can read you like a book, we know that, and they will tell you. So don't pretend. If it's something you don't know it. It's okay, we're all human. So be authentic, be real, and be honest. And then once you've made the pitch and you've succeeded in the pitch and it has worked out great for you, and they've done the story, remember, reporters are human, and so they too like to be thanked for something they've done. So follow up with a thank you, either personally, via email, but one of the great things about social media, you can give them a shout out in social media, and that really helps as well. So do that follow up, it's very important. And then sometimes, and it has happened over the course of my career, sometimes reporters the facts may get a little bit miscommunicated in some way, not intentionally, but remember, reporters are human. And so if you find that happens, let's talk about grace. Remember grace. Give the reporter some grace, people, please, especially these days. We really want to focus on giving grace when something doesn't come out exactly the way we intended, and there's a miscommunication and a fact in some way. You want to correct it, but you want to do it in a way that really does keep the relationship with the reporter and really does honor this whole grace. We really do want to give reporters grace as well. And so finally, I want to remind everyone, as you're pitching stories, remember the minority media and the diverse media. When you pitch your stories, something that we have to do as a PR firm more often than we like is remind our clients that, hey, there's diverse media out here that loves these stories as well. They too are suffering a little bit because of the environment we're in. So you might have to package that story up a little differently, but it's so important to include diverse media when you're pitching, whether that's locally or nationally. And so I wanted to make sure that we all heard that we included that in our pitch as well. And so some other tips: never say no comment, never make up a response. If you don't know, you don't know. So we'll talk a little bit about crisis communications in a little bit, but I'm going to turn it over to Megumi, who is going to talk about a little bit more about, now that you've gotten the pitch and they're going to do the story, how do you prep for that?
Thank you, Gayle. So many good tips there. And a lot of the tips that she shared, you will then also apply once you get that exciting response back, whether it's an email or maybe on Twitter, you receive a DM from a reporter who's interested in sharing your story. So now what? How do you prepare for that interview to make sure that the story idea that you pitched will come across once it is shared through the perspective of the reporter who it is that you're speaking to? So as Gayle mentioned, the research component is incredibly important in the pitching phase, and it's just as important then when you secure the media opportunity. So once you've identified specifically who it is you're going to be speaking to, do a little bit of additional background research on that reporter. Take a look at some of the other stories that they've recently written. If it's for a specific column, say it's the Good Life column, or if it's for a specific segment that channel, that 10 TV airs on a weekly basis, make sure to read and watch some of those previous bits of coverage so that you can really understand the type of story that is going to be told. Again, you want to prepare as much as possible for when you're in that moment and are talking with the reporter. You'll also, as you're thinking through preparing for that conversation, anticipate what questions the reporter may ask. So as Katy mentioned, the questions that they ask aren't necessarily meant to be rude, but be anticipating what are the types of things that they potentially could ask and plan out in advance how you would want to respond to that. Again, as you're doing your research and looking at similar types of coverage, you can also get some ideas based on reading those stories on the types of information that will be important for the reporter to include, but also what's really important for the audience who is going to be reading the article in the end. What are some of the maybe tips or lessons that you want to impart that you think is important for the audience to know about? So once you've done that research, you've anticipated the questions that they may ask, you want to then prepare some talking points. This is something, 2 questions that I always ask myself, not just in planning for a media interview, but I actually ask myself these questions before I send a pitch to a reporter. I ask, what's unique about my story and why now? So if you can include those bits of information in your pitch, it will help to strengthen that. But also it is just as important to be able to address and speak to those 2 questions as you are talking to the reporter, again, whether it is for a print piece of coverage or if you're doing an interview with a broadcast journalist. Outline your talking points. Be confident. You know your story best. So think through what are the main points that it is that you want to get across. And practice. You want to practice how it is that you'll deliver. I've even been known to stand in front of the mirror before I did a TV appearance or speak to a reporter, or maybe grab a colleague and ask them if you can kind of role play and bounce off some of the questions that they may ask, just to make sure that you feel really confident and prepared for that. Because we have Yolanda here, I wanted to also address some of the broadcast tips. And so Yolanda, keep me honest. If there's anything that I'm forgetting or I should add, please jump in. But in addition to, having those talking points and practicing and being prepared, when you're getting ready to do a broadcast interview, some simple tips, speak in sound bites. What this means is that you want to be able to speak in really concise sentences. Pause after you make your point. You want to be very, very clear. You don't want to ramble on. This will help those reporters as they're trying to get right to the point, because often they may have a 10-minute interview with you, but they need to shrink it down to about a minute and a half that's going to air on TV. And so you want to be sure to be really clear in the responses that you're given. Again, make it really easy for the journalist. Some other tips: avoid wearing busy pattern clothing. Solids work really, really well when you're on camera. And of course, you want to think through the visuals. What are those compelling images that will help tell your story? As you're working with the journalist, again, make it really easy for them. So maybe offer them some tips or some thoughts on additional visuals that they can include in the story that they will be airing about your small business. As Gayle had mentioned after the interview, it's so important to follow up and thank the reporter. Also, this is a story that you should be really proud about. And so share it on social media. You can share it with important customers and stakeholders, and you can tag the news outlet who had covered that story that you were in. So hopefully between some of the tips that Gayle and I have shared, you guys will be all set up for success, but we're also ready to answer any other one-off questions that you have.
Great, thank you. We do have a question. Carrington Carter has actually 2 questions regarding public relation firms and relationships. Carrington, if you want to ask those, please unmute and do so. That'd be great.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrington Carter. I own a vacation and rental home company called Getaway Society. Most of our properties are outside of Columbus, but I do have a question related to public relations. What should we look for in a PR consultant or a PR firm? And then at what point, how do you identify the point at which you have potentially outgrown the PR person that you're working with?
Gayle, do you want to jump in first, or do you want me to?
Either way, you can go first, and then I'll tag team.
Sounds good. Well, first and foremost, you want to make sure that whoever you are working with, whether it's a PR agency or an independent practitioner, that they really are your partner, that they serve as an extension of your team. You want someone who really knows and understands your business. Whenever we begin a partnership and relationship with a client, the first thing that we do is we sit down and really dig in to understand what are the business's goals and objectives, because we want to make sure that we clearly understand that so that we can create PR strategies that will help produce results that then drive toward those business goals. So those are the types of conversations you want to be having at the upfront. It's something that your PR agency should be able also to bring forward to you. We also, the results matter. We believe that transparency is also incredibly important. You want a partner who you trust, someone who is not just going to say yes to everything, but will also think through strategically and potentially push back if they need to, if maybe there's a different perspective or angle that needs to be considered. Innovation is also really key. You want a partner who is constantly bringing you new, fresh ideas and ways to look at your business, ways to help further reach and help you drive toward your business goals.
And then I'll just add to that, relationships matter. And so you really want to get to understand the PR firm to see if it's a good fit. And so culture matters. And then also, you want to know if that PR firm has experience in whatever it is that you're looking for. If you're looking to pitch media, you want to make sure that that PR firm has some long experience and relationships with media in the industry. And if they don't have a relationship, you want to really probe to see how they go about developing those relationships. Because while they may not have a relationship with a particular reporter, a good PR firm knows how to build those and knows how to get at it quickly. The other thing that's very important about knowing when to hire a PR firm, oftentimes, if it's a small story, a story that is not very large in your mind, those are sometimes things you can handle on your own. But if you have a campaign, or if you are looking to drive a long tail, or if you're looking to not only get local media, but regional and national media, those are times to really consider a PR firm to help you with that. And then the other thing that Megumi also mentioned is results. You want to look at the expertise, the results of the firm, and really get an understanding of how they have delivered as it relates to previous clients. And one of the things that we do as well with the Saunders Company is we do a deep dive in understanding who you are, what your goals are, what your business imperative is. And we also look at culture, because that's important to us. And we want to make sure that that's a good fit for both. And then another time to really engage a PR firm is if you are in a crisis. And so crisis communications is critical, and how you manage that crisis is very critical. You want to get an agency who has experience in crisis communications, has some results in crisis communications, has really knows how to get at that in a way that makes sure it protects your brand. And so if you're in a crisis, you don't want to wait until 3 days later and you see stuff just rolling all over the place in social media. You want to get at it quickly, because there are things that we can do as PR agencies to help mitigate. And so those are some opportunities when you really want to bring in a PR firm. And then how do you know when you've outgrown them is your second question, I do believe. You'll know that you will know. The most important thing is making sure that that PR firm is up on the trends, is following trends effectively, and knows not only what's happening today, but can look ahead. And so if that PR firm is not delivering those types of results for you any longer, then you'll know it's time to move on.
Great, thanks. Carrington, does that, did you get?
Yes,
did you get
thank you very
looking
much.
for?
I appreciate it.
May I add something else just real quickly? And that is something that Megumi said when preparing for your interviews. I just have to underscore that it is critically important for you to practice that. I know as I mentioned, I've been in this business for over 30 years, and I still make sure that I get my head together, myself together, and walk through those message points, because you have to be succinct. You don't have a lot of time when you're talking to reporters, and you want to make sure that the most important essence of what you're trying to get out, you get out, and that you have it in chunks, because Yolanda's not going to be able to put a minute and a half of your interview in her story. So I just wanted to underscore that it's critically important.
Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask our panel of journalists a question based on what's been mentioned a couple of times already about building relationships. And so from the journalist perspective, you get lots of pitches from people you don't know. And it's kind of hard to weigh, because you want credibility. You want to make sure that you're telling a story that that really is going to resonate with readers, and that the source of the story is really credible. And so if the journalist could talk about the impact of getting that sort of credibility check on a story from a source that you trust, whether it's a PR person, someone that you've already written about or have a relationship with. Can you address that, and how you can help people who are coming at you cold to be able to use, in a sense, people who do have relationships with you already, to sort of give you the credibility that will give the journalist a little comfort that, oh, okay, maybe I should look at this a little closer. Anybody want to tackle that? How about
sure, Ray.
Okay.
I'll just say, if I have someone in my life who I trust their instinct on whether a story is a good story or not, they're approaching it like a reader, like I do, and they say, you should really meet this person, should learn more about their business. I think this person has a really interesting story to tell. That does go a long way. And so I think it's okay. Just like relationships matter, networking can be really important too, in getting through and cutting through the noise in journalists' inboxes.
Good, thanks, Katy. We have another question, so I'm going to move to that. It's from Haley Boning. Haley, do you want to ask that, please?
Sure, hi. I was actually putting a couple of different questions in chat. So my first question would be both for the reporters and also for the PR agencies, what your biggest pet peeves are when you're dealing either with companies directly or with agencies that are representing companies during the time of a crisis. or something that that business would consider a crisis? What are your biggest pet peeves?
Lying. I'll just come out and say that first of all.
So your top three, Katy, would be lying, lying, and lying.
Lying, yeah.
And Gayle Saunders' top three would be lying, lying, and lying. Because credibility matters in a crisis more than anything. And so our counsel is, you may not be able to tell everything right now, because sometimes if it's a death, you have to reach that family first. But what you tell in the moment, it has to be honest and it has to be authentic. So if you don't know, and if you don't have all the facts, it's okay. Let the reporters know that, hey, I'll be back with you in another half an hour and give you an update. But lying is one of the worst things that you could ever do. And that's something that goes against PR ethics from an accreditation perspective.
If I could
Right.
add to that.
If you lie and we cover the story, we cover you, we're doing that, it makes us look bad as well. So you got to know when the truth comes out, and it always does, we're going to follow up on that story. We're going to be after you because, you made us look bad, because it's all about credibility with journalists as well. So that's very important, is telling the truth. And like you said, if you don't know the answer, you don't know. And I agree with Gayle, what she said earlier, never just say no comment.
Mhm.
The general perception is no comment means, you likely did it, or, because my thing is, if I didn't do it, I'm innocent, or, this was a mistake or whatever, you make a comment, even if you can say, well, my attorney advises us not to talk right now, but I'm just saying we will, get to the bottom of this, and it's not what it is. But no comment and just avoiding it, it looks bad.
If I could follow up on that, a close second to lying is hiding. We'll find you. And we're not going to not write a story just because you don't comment or you try to avoid the media. The PR practitioners could speak better to this, but you can either own the message or you can let your neighbors and friends own it, because the people across the street from your factory that just blew up are going to have plenty of things to say about how it was managed. And if you want to let them do that, then we'll talk to them. But we're not going to not do a story.
That's exactly right, Alan. And how, in working with a PR practitioner, we can help with managing that story. Alan, yesterday when we were doing our walkthrough, you shared a really great quote that you had received from someone in your experience working on a crisis. And I wrote it down, but I would love for you to share it with the group here, because I think that they would agree, and it underscores the importance of building relationships with media prior to ending up in a crisis. Oh, Alan, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I was on a panel similar to this a few years ago with a battalion chief from the Columbus Fire Department, and it was a panel for reporters and first responders, and the relationship between the two. And the battalion chief said, "Look, I don't want to meet you for the first time on the worst day of my life," and obviously that has stuck with me, and I work hard, as I know other journalists on this panel and in our newsrooms do, to make sure that as best we can, we get to know a lot of people, so that whether it's our worst day or their worst day, we know each other when that day comes, and we have at least a bit of a relationship, if not a level of trust that allows us to talk to each other and make sure that the message is communicated accurately and fairly.
Can I add a follow-up to my question? Maybe for Alan or for some of the other panelists. So I haven't actually done media relations since we used to send press releases on fax machines. So if my clients need PR and media relations, I send them to one of the fine PR folks that we have on the call today. So, but I am curious to know what your thoughts are on this idea of background and doing things or talking on background, and whether that's a myth or it's helpful, and what your thoughts are.
background information is helpful. I'd say we're cautious about promising, anonymity or something of that nature, which I feel is different than background. It's always helpful to have background information when a story is about to break. A quick example is when I was covering higher education, there was a communication person at the university who would occasionally call me to say something big's going to break, and I was on this beat every day, so everybody in higher ed knew that I was the person at the dispatch who covered higher ed, and he would say, because we had a high level of trust, I'm gonna give this story to you. Sorry, Yolanda. I'm gonna give this story to you, Alan, because then I know that the message will be clear when it appears, and I'll take my lumps tomorrow from your competitors because I gave it to you first. And I know this happens to what goes around comes around, and I'm sure it happens to all of us at one time or another. But the point is that I could get a heads up on something that was about to break. He would give me information that would help me accurately reflect, as opposed to having to write the story, in 20 minutes on deadline. I would have, an hour or two, or maybe a day to do background and get it ready to go. So that, in that scenario, the background is super helpful.
Great, thanks, Alan. We are a little over time. We do have one question left that I'd like to pose for a brief answer before we wrap up. I know Gayle needs to jump off soon for another meeting. But Patrick, forgive me if I'm not going to pronounce your last name correctly. Donadio?
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a quick question about if you talk to a reporter and they seem very interested in your story, what about sending along resources like a video clip, a graph, a photo? Any thoughts about that?
Hi, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially for television media, we always need video. We always need, pictures, especially now during COVID, because a lot of us are doing stories from the office. We're not leaving. We're doing Zoom interviews and we're getting pictures and things like that. But absolutely, the more information, the better. But absolutely, if you have any videos or things like that, and if we can use that, it helps. So the more the better, and we will pick and choose, what we need. But if you have it, absolutely send it.
I would add one more thing, especially as a glossy print magazine. It's really helpful to have those kind of provided resources, but if you can make sure that it's of the highest quality, so the largest photos possible, that's what we want. Not because we really need that to tell your story as effectively as possible and have the images look as good as possible.
Is that information on your website so you can tell us like what requirements you have for a certain media?
I'd be happy to share that with you if you want. It's usually,
Okay.
we don't go into that detail on our website, but yeah, I can share you with more if you want. But yeah, highest resolution as possible generally. Bigger the better.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Last question. As a recap, just so you're aware, we will be sending information tips that will summarize what was discussed today on this call to everyone that signed up for the forum today. So you take a look at that coming out in the next few days. So you'll have some tips to follow, and now you'll have some sources to follow up on, whether you've got a good story to tell or just want to start building that relationship. So appreciate everybody on the panel for your answers and explanations, everyone for attending. We hope you found this helpful. Take care and stay safe. All right. See everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.